So we'll start with Nathan Щаранський. What should be the Jewish world's top priority in responding to the war in Ukraine? Should it be the physical safety of Ukrainian Jews? Should it be aiding the Ukrainian military response to the Russian invasion? Should it actually be evacuating the most vulnerable Jews in the Ukrainian population? What should it be that Jews around the world are focused on in responding to this crisis?
Well, I think that the first priority for everybody should be the victory of Ukraine, because we are speaking about the future of the free world, about the principles of the free world is based and will be based. So it's very important not only to stop as quickly as possible suffering of Ukraine, but also to have a victory. But of course, we as the Jews have to be concerned always about the fate of our brothers. And I would say that Jewish organizations are doing quite a good job in helping to those who decided to emigrate, to leave Ukraine, to come to Israel, to other places. I think we are quite well mobilized, and different organizations, whether it is Jewish Agency or Joint, and some others, Chabad, of course, are doing a very good job. The challenge is not only to evacuate. Everybody who wants to be evacuated has to be helped and to do it as quickly as possible. But what about those communities which stay, which are destroyed, which are in terrible shape? By the way, as the one who is dealing a lot with the archives, I have to say in some cities, the archives of Jewish communities are in big danger. So we really have to help to these Jewish communities to survive and to be strong and to overcome these difficult days and this difficult winter and this cold and this hunger and this destruction. It's not something new for Jewish world to express solidarity to help to those communities which are in danger. But today the situation is especially urgent because of the barbaric character of this Putin's aggression.
So Israel has had to balance a number of potentially conflicting objectives against one another over the course of this conflict. There's the need to protect Jews inside of both Ukraine and Russia. There's the reality of the Russian military operating in Syria. There are pressures from the United States, pressures from China, from all over the world, sort of bearing down on Israel's response to this conflict. And I was hoping, Nathan Щаранський, let's start with you. You could talk a bit about whether Israel has been successful in sort of balancing these different concerns in approaching this war over the past year.
Well, it depends, of course, whom you ask. I think for overwhelming majority of our politicians, both from the previous government and today's government, it looks that we are very successful in, on one hand, expressing a lot of sympathy and solidarity and humanitarian assistance, and by the way, more than humanitarian, also in intelligence and some other assistance. And at the same time, practically, at least twice a week, we are taking bases of Iran in Syria and sometimes even in Iran itself without Russian army interfering. And unfortunately, Russian army is on our borders. So yes, from this point, Israel is successful. Some other people like me think that in this so clear case between black and white, between absolute evil and good, in such a crucial fight for the future of the free world, Israel has to move from humanitarian assistance to military assistance. And there are more and more signs that it will happen, but it didn't happen until now, and it's not because of the lack of sympathy. I agree with everybody and with Ksenia and others. Israel is overwhelmingly on the side of Ukraine. Israel has special challenges of fighting for our right to exist, fighting against our enemies, and at the same time keeping Russia not to interfere into this war.
The Jews in Ukraine are the ones who are obviously under the most direct danger from this conflict. But the Jews in Russia, which is another community of, estimates say, almost 250,000 Jews, have also been affected by this. The Putin regime has cracked down on sort of whatever remained of civil society and civic life in the past year. Jews from Russia, many of them are kind of itching to get out of the country. It's become more difficult to actually aid Jews inside of Russia as well as Ukraine. Nathan, I was hoping you could talk a bit about kind of the challenge of that angle to it, of aiding Jews in both of these countries that have now become so much more complex to reach in the past year.
Well, first of all, we speak a lot about Aliyah from Ukraine. We have to remember that practically twice as many Jews are coming from Ukraine are coming from Russia, from Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other places. And this proportion, judging from all, will only increase. I think there'll be 3-4 times more Jews who will make Aliyah from Russia than from Ukraine in the next couple of years. And why? Because Ukrainian Jews are, of course, under physical threat. They find that their homes are destroyed. They feel that families are divided. And they are looking for the safe havens. At the same time, some of them feel that that is just the time to fight for Ukraine. While Russian Jews find that they can discover they are again behind the Iron Curtain. In a very short period of time, in 2 or 3 years, suddenly they were taken back all the rights which they had in the last 30 years. And it looks even not like Brezhnev's times, almost like Stalin's times. You can be sentenced for high treason under the same accusation that I was, practically for nothing. Simply saying, condemning aggression to Ukraine. The free society institutions are closed. The newspapers and the TV stations which they listen to or watch to disappear. And they're really afraid that they'll be again isolated from all the world. Then again will be not free citizens. And that's why so many of them are leaving. And of course we have to help to them as to everybody else in these difficult times. The other challenge is not for specific Jew, but for the leaders of Jewish community, those who are building these communities. I constantly get questions from some rabbis, from Jewish community leaders, what they should do. And do we feel that they all have to leave? Well, of course, I believe that the best, the most secure place for everybody is Israel. But as long as there exists community, we have to do everything to reconnect them back to us, in spite of all those isolation. And I always advise to these leaders, continue doing everything you can to help strengthen Jewish community until the moment the regime will demand from you to demonstrate publicly solidarity with the war. There should be no compromises under the pretext that we have to continue our Jewish life, to express solidarity and support to this brutal aggression. And that's, by the way, the challenge, which is growing bigger and bigger, because I think we are facing now the time when our shlichim in summer camps and teachers in Jewish schools, and of course the leaders of the communities will be under the pressure to express, not only to express solidarity, but to support this barbaric aggression. And here they will have to make a choice, and we have to help them in making this right.
Last year, over the summer, I spent a few days in Poland, and it was amazing seeing just the way that Jews around the world had mobilized in order to provide aid for refugees at the Polish-Ukrainian border. And really, from the reality of Zelensky himself being Jewish, down to just the people working on the ground providing aid, there's such a Jewish kind of cast to this entire conflict. The Jews pop up practically everywhere. We really do have this kind of incredible role to play. And I was hoping that the three of you could speak kind of briefly about what the significance of this is, the fact that this is a generation-defining global crisis in which we have a real kind of role. And let's start with Nathan.
The struggle of Ukraine is very meaningful for Israel in a number of meanings. One of them is that Ukraine is fighting for its national identity. Putin declared that it is not a nation, and they are showing that they are ready to give their life in order to keep them as an independent nation. And secondly, they fight for the right to be a democratic state. And that's exactly the difference between them and Russia today. They insist that they don't want to go back to totalitarian regime. So they are fighting for the right to be Ukrainian democratic state. Isn't it the struggle of Israel, who even today has to prove again and again that not only it is possible, it is normal to be national democratic state. In a way, Ukrainian struggle and its sympathy, which it directs from all the world, brings back the positive meaning to the word nationalism. Liberal democratic nationalism is not only a bad word, which was used almost as a curse against Israel, who needs a Jewish state, but it's something very positive. And Ukraine by itself is reminding, practically on every podcast you can see it, that they are learning from Israel, that Israel example, how to survive among the enemies and to be national democratic state, that's what they are learning. As to Jews, yes, we are fulfilling our mission. We have to support people who are on the forefront of the struggle for the right to be proud, independent nation and defending all the free world. And yes, and I agree with my colleagues that very soon, when the world will have to help to Ukraine to rebuild itself, to create transparent, normal society, we Jews can play a especially big role, not only because of our experience, not only because of our enthusiasm, but because we do know, many of us did work in Ukraine, do know the problems of this society joining the free society. The transparency will be one of the main demands from America and the others to continue support Ukraine. And we know how to do it, and we know how to help, and we have to help.